Doug, good to see you again.
Hi, Jason.
More than 80 school districts are having bond elections in May. $12 billion is on the ballot. I'm looking at this and I'm wondering, are school districts and communities and parents and those involved, are they trying to do an end run around the legislature over school funding here?
No, so with school funding, there are two types of funds that school districts look at. They look at funds that are generated by maintenance and operation, or M&O taxes. The other one is interest and sinking, or debt service. And the two funds cannot be commingled, so to speak. So M&O funds are used to provide salaries for teachers, utilities, all of those things.
Daily operations.
Daily operations.
Sure.
Now the daily operations portion of it, schools are suffering because they have not had their basic funding formula changed since 2019. So it is creating deficit budgets. However, the bonds themselves are a product of just the tremendous growth that is going on across North Texas. Yeah. You know, before I came in to talk to you, we looked at a couple numbers. The DFW has grown by 1.2 million people in the last 10 years. And if you just look at maybe just a third of those being school-age kids, that's about 400,000 students alone coming into to the North Texas area.
Let's lay this out, Doug, so our viewers understand this. The bonds that people vote on are for capital projects.
They're capital projects. They're building schools.
Build schools,
right.
Build stadiums, to build out science classrooms,
Absolutely.
Buy things like that.
Absolutely.
There are 89 of them right now on the ballot in May. What do you make of that? Because that number is not a huge number, but 10 years ago, we likely wouldn't have seen this many up before voters.
So it's all just driven by the growth themselves. If you look at, and really what's happening is it's the expansion of what I would consider to be the mid-sized districts. School districts maybe between 5,000 and 20,000 students in the suburbs that are seeing explosive growth, growth from between 8 to 12% annually. I talked to one superintendent who was in a school district of about 8,000 students when the year began. By the end of the year, he had 9,000 students enrolled. They had 1,000 students enroll during the school year itself. And so because of that, here's what we would do in Sunnyvale. And Sunnyvale was a fast growth. Now, we didn't grow that dynamically, but we grew during my 16 years quite a bit. We looked at it that between every time 16 to 18 students moved into our district, we needed to provide an additional classroom. And so if you think about it from that lens, there are districts that are having to build one elementary per year, maybe even two elementaries per year, a middle school every other year, some things like that. One school district about an hour north of here is growing. They were a school district that was in Conference 4A for UIL purposes. Within 10 years, they're going to have multiple high schools.
Wow.
Yeah.
And just to make sure I'm clear on this, are school districts right now, do you think, rushing these things to the ballot with so much uncertainty in Austin when it comes to school funding?
There is that degree. Now, again, legislation, when it comes to school funding, you're going to see two pieces. You're going to see some legislation that is going to be set up, hopefully, to raise the basic allotment, that multiplier that the legislature must pass to determine how much money schools are provided per pupil.
Yeah, so it's a basic allotment. 10-cent version is that it's a check that school districts get for every kid.
For every
class.
kid.
Yeah.
And
that hasn't changed in a while.
It hasn't been raised since 2019. Oh. And that's important. If you think about how much inflation has taken place since 2019, it's incredible. School buses in 2019 cost about $90,000 to $95,000 a piece. Now, you better budget $150,000 for a school bus. Wow. Property insurance has almost doubled in that last 6 years. And we have to make sure that we continue to offer competitive salaries for our teachers to make sure, first of all, that we keep them in the profession and then keep them in the district. And so on the general operating side, you get that. But on the debt service side, there are a number of other factors that have to be considered as well. And one of the trends in the legislature has been every time they come together, they increase the homestead exemption, which, by the way, is positive. We understand property taxes are too high, but it's the funding mechanism for school districts.
Yeah. And, municipal elections in May, they're notoriously low with turnout. How much is on the line if these bonds don't pass for these smaller and medium-sized school districts across the state?
Well, they've got a couple things that they're going to have to do. If those bonds don't pass, so that they have the capacity to build other classrooms, because they're going to continue to get kids to move in. You have classrooms themselves that are overcrowded. Classrooms that were designed for 20 to 22 kids now have to have 26 to 28 kids, not an ideal educational setting whatsoever. Or they begin to put portable classrooms in front of their buildings, behind their buildings, and that's a safety risk. It really
That's
is.
not sustainable either.
No, it's not. It's a Band-Aid approach. So what you see is those bonds that fell in May, they'll be put back on the ballot in November. And the other thing the legislature is doing is the legislatures are wanting to go to one uniformed date, and they want it to be the November of the general election.
And we've seen the legislature in years past kind of go after school bonds and say that these are going to be a tax increase for you. That's language that has to be on all school bonds.
A lot of the language is set up that way. The other thing that they try to do, again, is try to make a uniform date. One of the bills has actually been for the bond to pass, you have to have a 2/3 majority.
Of voters to pass it.
Of voters to pass it.
How hard is that threshold to get?
It's incredibly difficult. Right now, a school district that passes a bond at 60%, what that shows is a lot of confidence in the district, a well thought out bond, and a well run campaign.
Wow.
But 67%, 2/3 majority would be absolutely, it would be very difficult. And by the way, the legislators know that. That's the reason they set that.
Does that have support?
Very little. That bill itself, I don't believe has the legs.
You know, Governor Abbott says that, hey, listen, Texas is putting more money to public education than ever before. Is he wrong about that?
No, he's correct about that.
Well, then people watching are going to say, what's the but?
But more money is going into education than ever. But I'll give you a great example. At the end of the 23 legislative session, in an effort to roll back property taxes. Again, property taxes are too high. There was $11 billion that was moved into, quote, education to help buy back that property value or those property taxes. So what happens is when the state contributes more money to education, they compress the amount of money that schools generate from their taxes, but there's no new money for schools. It's more state aid, less local taxes collected, but there's no additional money, but they still count that $11 billion that they insert as, quote, money for schools, and it's just absolutely not accurate.
That makes sense with part of the money. If vouchers pass, like a lot of Republicans say they have the votes for, if vouchers pass, what will that do to public education? With so many of these bonds on the ballot, with classrooms growing, with these small, medium-sized districts across the state, what's that going to do to them?
Well, keep in mind, if vouchers pass and the state funds students to leave the ISD and go to a private school, then the amount of money that the student earns, the district per pupil, which I know the debate has been how much is that factor. Right now, I would estimate it's around $7,500 per pupil, somewhere in there, depending on, again, a number of factors, but average district, I'd say about $7,500 per. Those dollars leave the school district. So
if the student's not there, you're not teaching that child anyways. You're not technically paying for electricity for them.
So let's say we have 30 students leave Sunnyvale, okay, the district that I was the superintendent of a long time. That would mean the 30 students leave, or the average of about 2 per grade. So that 30 students would mean we are losing around $250,000 in revenue. However, you can't just eliminate one third grade position just because you lose 3 kids out of third grade. So it does not give school districts the flexibility of being able to have less teachers for sure, just because you have 30 kids leave the district. So it's up to the school district to come up with the other $250,000. I am not against school choice from a parent aspect. You know, they talk a lot about parent choice, and the parents have the right to determine where their kids want to go to school. I don't think anyone is arguing that. Absolutely, parents should have that right. And if they opt to put their kids in private school, that's okay too. I will tell you that for this voucher program, from the public school standpoint, we believe that it has to be equally funded. If the students get a $10,000, if the students that leave get a $10,000 voucher, a public school student should be funded at that same level. It should be equal access.
Yeah, let me go through that because I want to make sure that I ask that question. Since leaving Sunnyvale, since retiring from Sunnyvale, you're doing a lot of things, but one of the things you're doing is consulting different school boards. And
Right.
one of the things you were telling me about is you're talking to them about what good school choice could look like.
Yeah, you know-
And a lot of people in public education say it doesn't look good at all. What are you talking about?
Well, good school choice at the core is a system that allows parents to decide where they want their kids to go to school.
Right.
But for school choice to be effective, it is the kids should be equally funded. If the private school kid is worth $10,000, so is the public school kid. If the public schools have to take all children of all dynamic, in my opinion, so should the private. And then the accountability factor. You know, one of the things we've talked a lot about over the years has been the STAR test. Right now, all public schools must give the STAR test. The question is, if the private schools are taking those public funds, are they going to be subject to giving the same assessment that a public school would?
And right now, there's no accountability.
And right now, there is no accountability for those funds.
Sure.
In addition to that, of course, the A through F rating is what schools are rated by, known by. I'm an A school, I'm a B school. There is not that element in private school. And to me, good school choice is one that if public money flows to private schools, then will they have the same requirements that a public school has?
We're almost halfway through the legislature here. What are you watching for to happen next? What's the thing you're keeping an eye on?
My opinion is, if I had to forecast right now, I would anticipate that some form of education savings accounts will pass. I fully believe that the governor has the votes. In the last few years, it's really been some rural Republicans that have said it's not good for our local communities, and they voted against it.
Right.
He went out and led efforts to try
Sure.
to get some of those defeated in the last primary, was successful some, and so he believes he has the votes. I think that we're going to be watching for is to see what the ESA legislation is actually going to be. Will it be universal school choice, which I think is some goal? Will it be selective according to maybe just certain students qualify for it? And then the other thing is, will it go to the students that are in most need for that choice? One of the models that they've used is they've looked at a lot in Arizona. One of the facts that they are now finding is in Arizona, a lot of the ESAs are actually going to students that were already in private school.
You think it's going to pass in Texas, though?
It would surprise me at this point if it didn't.
Wow.
Yeah.
Doug, thanks for the time.
Absolutely, Jason. Great being with you.